Take you inside America's election headquarters now. Democratic candidates distancing themselves from the president this election season. Now they're facing a new roadblock. Just a few weeks ago, the president said his agenda will be on the ballot this November. And yesterday, the president doubling down, saying all Democrats running away from him now are really tied to him.
These are all folks who vote with me. They have supported my agenda in Congress. This isn't about my feelings being hurt. These are folks who are strong allies and supporters of me. And, I tell them, I said, you know what, you do what you need to win.
Our next guest writes that President Obama is toxic for Democrats in this election. And everyone seems to recognize that except for the White House. Joining us now, Ellison Barber, staff writer at the Washington Free Beacon. They may be strong allies and supporters, but they're running about as far away from the president as they can.
They are, and the people who they're really hurting are Senate Democrats, who are in incredibly close races in all of the battleground states. There was a YouGov poll at the beginning of this month, and in every single battleground state with Senate races, the president's approval rating was, or his disapproval rating was over 50%.
Yeah.
They are doing absolutely no favors for him. They just gave the Republicans another gift in sound bites. They gave him one just earlier in this month that we already saw that my policies are on the ballot. That already popped up in attack ads in Senate races in Georgia, New Hampshire, Kansas, and Kentucky. They've given them another soundbite where Republicans can take it and do the exact same thing and play it in states where the president has an abysmal approval rating.
And remind people, because, the Democrats are saying this is not a national election. This is not a national referendum. These are all about local issues and local races. But if you suddenly bring in the president saying all of these people are my supporters, they vote with me, all of a sudden you're making it a national election.
Yeah, you are, and it really doesn't help them. And the thing to remember about midterms, particularly the Senate midterms and for Senate Democrats, is they already were going up they already had a tough battle, I guess,
they
coming
had to
into
defend more seats.
Yes, they had to defend more seats. Midterm, the demographic typically favors Republicans because it's older, white male voters. So they already had numerous things that they were going to have to make up for. Then you add in the fact that for months now, the president has had a really low approval rating, and then add in things like this where they are trying to distance themselves from him because of that approval rating and low approval on nearly every single major issue. And then he comes in and consistently brings himself back into the race for the last 2 months. Yeah. And it's 2 weeks to go. That does not help them at all.
So let's imagine that you're president of the United States. You have an underwater approval rating in the battleground states where these Senate races are being fought. In other words, you're down below 50% on your approval rating. And what do? You come out and say these folks are with me?
It's incredibly odd because they seem to know on some level that he won't be valuable in terms of actually showing up in those states because he's done fundraising, but in terms of actually campaigning and going out on the stump, he hasn't done that in any of the Senate races, only in a couple gubernatorial races. And it's interesting because in 2006, President George Bush was similarly toxic.
Yeah, but he was with the Iraq War underway.
Yes.
After 6 years in office, people did not want to stand on the same stage with George W. Bush.
But the big difference was he acknowledged that and actually made a joke about it. And he kind of just said, yeah, absolutely, I don't blame them at all. They don't want to campaign with me. And then just left it there. And President Obama kind of comes in and is saying, yeah, some of them don't want to campaign with me, but don't worry about it because it's still my policies on the ballot. And he's seemingly doubling down and keeps tying himself to Democrats instead of doing kind of what you've seen previous presidents do when they're not going to be helpful to a lot of the people in their party that are running for re-election. He's not stepping back and kind of just letting them do their thing. He keeps getting back in on it, and it's not going to help. It's really not going to help Senate Democrats. And you have to think about people in Alaska or Arkansas and just thinking, poor Mark Begich, because this is going to be terrible for him.
This president doesn't have a great deal of experience as a politician. I mean, he was a sort of a lackluster state senator in Illinois, won the Senate seat. Is it his tin ear for politics that is creating this situation?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't think so. I do think it is interesting, though, that it seems to be everyone else really does notice and recognize that the president is toxic, particularly for Senate Democrats, and they seem to not want to admit that in the White House. And I don't think it's that they don't know, because I think they are competent, and he has competent staffers around him, and they see the same polls that we do. But for some reason, they've decided that that doesn't matter and that they're going to allow him to keep making remarks like this. I mean, the first time he said this in October, that was a prepared remark where he said these policies are on the ballots, and that was a big mistake, and the fact that they don't realize something like that is going to be a mistake is a problem.
And you say it's a gift for Republicans.
An absolute gift. They're going to put this in attack ads just like they did with the last statement.
Ellison Barber from the Washington Free Beacon. Thank you.
You bet.